I'm only reading, so you start
I got it.
right off with
I
there.
recopied and added a few things. Good evening. Would everyone please take their seats? I'd like to welcome those of you here at the Suffield Middle School and those of you watching this live streaming of tonight's annual budget town meeting. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please silence any cell phones at this time. Anyone who speaks at the microphone must identify themselves, and please note their name as well as your street address. In addition, please speak directly into the microphone in order for the live streaming to be successful. I'd like to start this budget meeting by thanking the people who worked very hard to prepare what I think is a reasonable budget in these uncertain economic times. Thank you to the department heads who accepted my challenge to do more with less in their budgets. Thank you to Deb Serrato, Finance Director, who patiently reviewed historical data on every account in the town operating budget with me to identify opportunities to be more efficient. And thank you to the Board of Selectmen for approving a reasonable starting point for the budget, and to ACE and the Board of Finance, led by Justin Donnelly as chair, for working in partnership with me to achieve a fiscally responsible 2016-17 fiscal year budget for the residents of Suffield. Our first order of business is to elect a moderator. Are there any nominations? Yes. Okay. Mark O'Hara has been nominated as moderator for the town meeting. Do I hear a second? Okay, seconded by Justin Donnelly. Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of Mark O'Hara? All opposed? Okay, Mark O'Hara will serve as the moderator tonight.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Mark O'Hara, if you just heard. I'm going to go over the rules of the town meeting, but before I do, I just sort of want to mention what a uniquely American and New England specifically tradition this is. It really stems from the very origins of our country when during the time of the English Civil War, when we were planted here and there was a lot of neglect by the mother country, and when they tried to reassert their will 80 years later, we said no thank you, and that's where this comes from, and I want to thank you all for coming out and participating in it. So having given you my little history lesson, I'd like to start by recognizing our flag and by stating the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd please rise. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Okay, thank you. Tonight we have, I believe we only have one or two motions that we're going to be addressing tonight, two motions. And the way we'll do that is we'll have the motion will be made and seconded, and then we'll have a period of, we'll have a presentation, and then there will be time for discussion and questions from the floor. When we do that, you need to be recognized by the chair as having the floor, which I'll do if you raise your hand, and we'll bring you a microphone to speak. And when it's your turn to speak or make a comment, if you could please announce your name and your address for the record so that we know who's speaking and that they're from Suffield. So at this time, do I hear any resolutions from the floor? Oh, I have to read the legal note. Thank you. Okay.
And then we'll go for there. Okay. So this legal notice appeared on May 6, 2016 in the JI. The legal notice states, a notice of annual budget meeting, 2015-16, Town of Suffield. Notice is hereby given that the annual budget meeting of the inhabitants of the Town of Suffield, Connecticut, qualified to vote at town meeting, will be held in the auditorium in Suffield Middle School, 350 Mountain Road, Suffield, on Wednesday, May 11, 2016, at 7 p.m. for the purpose of wit. Number 1, to consider and act upon the report and recommendations of the Board of Finance and to make such appropriations in connection therewith as may be advisable. Number 2, to consider and act upon a motion authorizing the Board of Finance to print and distribute explanatory text concerning the budget if the budget is petitioned to referendum. Such text may not advocate approval or disapproval of the budget and must conform to the Connecticut General Statute, Section 9-369B. Dated at Suffield, Connecticut, this 4th day of May, 2016, Board of Selectmen, Melissa M. Mack, First Selectman, Mel Shafet, Selectman, Crystal Holmes, Selectman, Timothy Reynolds, Selectman, and Joanne Sullivan, Selectman. That's what was on here. The budget year, this is a misprint, will be 16-17.
Okay, thank you. At this time, are there any resolutions from the floor?
Cami Bider, 360 South Main Street. Resolved that the town meeting of the town of Suffield authorizes the proposed budget with a total expenditure of $61,632,624 to be approved.
Are there any seconds? Thank you. Okay, at this time, we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation from the First Selectman. Thank you.
Okay, hello again. For those of you who attended the public hearing, I will point out the one change that you've seen since then. So we'll start out with the expenditures. You'll see in 2016-17, the Board of Education, $34,230,243. You'll be hearing more about that in just a few minutes from our superintendent. If you follow down, you'll see the General Government Operations, $15,044,798, a change of 1.46% over fiscal year 15-16. On the next page, this represents a pie chart representation of what you saw on the prior slide. Now looking at the revenues, the one change that has been made since the public hearing is under fund balance, where $188,000 has been taken from fund balance for the Route 75 utility expansion project, and that was decided by the Board of Finance at a meeting after the last public hearing. We also will see total other revenue of $18,723,979. Prior state and federal and education-related revenues are based on the latest numbers we had from the state at the time that we had to finalize the budget. As most people know, the state budget is not yet finalized. There is supposed to be a special meeting, but there is still quite a bit of debate about what we will see. So we went with the most recent numbers we had, and we will make adjustments as necessary. So at the end of the day, the percentage change is 1.51% increase over the last fiscal year. If you look to the next, you can also see a pie chart representation of the revenues. Next, we'll look at the grand list. We were quite favorable in Suffield. Our real estate grand list is up a bit for commercial and residential real estate. $1,195,409,105, a 1.3% increase. Personal property up a bit, motor vehicle up a bit, and the final taxable grand list is up 1.38%, which is a very healthy increase across the state. Many cities and towns did not even break the 1% number. So good job. Next page, we can look at the net collectible grand list, which reflects a 1.5% delinquency uncollectible factor, and $8 million are added as additional assessed value based on outstanding certificates of occupancy that we expect to be closed during this fiscal year. And so we can see that that reflects a 1.38% increase, which results in a mill rate of 28.20, which is a 0.42 change from last fiscal year. And so what that means is if you had an appraised value of $350,000 home that was assessed at $245,000, which it's a statewide 70% of appraised value is your assessed value, so $245,000. At our current fiscal, our current fiscal year mill rate, you would be at a 27.78 mill rate. At the 28.2 mill rate, you would, our proposed mill rate, the difference is 0.42% and an increase of $102.90 increase. So that's just a little example of what you can expect as an increase. So it's a pretty slight adjustment. Okay, just some highlights from staffing changes that you'll see in this current operating budget on the town side. New police officer, a police records clerk, a new assistant finance director, which will be a part-time position, additional hours at our IT help desk, some additional hours for Parks and Recreation at the registration clerk, with our hope to open Babs Beach to the public in August of this year. We have lifeguards in attendance. We have additional hours for the Public Works Executive Secretary to support Public Works with their very large capital caseload coming up. And we are looking to regionalize Animal Control Office with Windsor Locks and East Granby. Next, we look at the major capital expenditures, which are net of grants, pavement management, some drainage catch basin. We'll be improving some of the roofs at the Spalding School. Of course, we are dedicated to farmland preservation with $250,000 dedicated for that. We are pleased to be putting fiber optic extension from Town Hall over to the library, and then continuing over to the ambulance and back to the senior center for $185,000. And we have our second year of the high school tennis court improvements. We are adding the new high school bleachers, townwide telephone system, which will be a terrific improvement to the infrastructure townwide, voice over IP at $65,000. We are making some remediations based on the ADA findings at the, I believe, at the schools. Babs Beach, again, to get this very valuable community resource open in August. We are putting in access road, gates, and storage. Town Hall, we are working on digitizing records. This is part of the Town Hall renovation project impacting our space needs, is that we are moving to digitize as much as possible. And this is step one. And at the police department, door locks and cameras for $18,000, some much needed improvements there. Next, we'll take a look at the history of our fund balance. The unassigned fund balance, you'll see, is increased slightly over the last fiscal years. We've been a steady increase. Our goal as a town is to have up to a 10 to 15% increase. This balance allows us to be flexible, where as a town we haven't always planned, we haven't projected out as many years as perhaps we might have, but because we have a flexible fund balance, we are able to respond to when things come up. So again, a slight improvement. Okay, and with that, I will turn it over to our superintendent, Karen Barassi.
Good evening. Karen Barassi, Superintendent of Suffield Public Schools, and I too want to thank everyone who was involved in this budget process. particularly all of the administrators at the schools, including the Director of Special Ed, who's here tonight, Assistant Superintendent Brian Hendrickson, who's also here tonight. And of course, we wouldn't be where we are without the Board of Education. They were a vital part of this process. And it was wonderful working with the Board of Finance, I have to tell you. They asked great questions. They were there from the beginning, and I truly appreciate that, Justin. So we always want to remember why we're here. You know, this can seem like it's all about money, but for us in education, it's all about the kids. And it's about preparing students so that they do have the knowledge and the skills to be successful in this rapidly changing world we have. I also want to thank, and you can see all the meetings we've had. We had multiple Board of Ed meetings, presentations. I had superintendent information sessions, and I thank the parents who took the time to come and speak with me, as well as give me their concerns and ask all the right questions. This budget invests in students, and when we invest in students, we are investing in Suffield's future. We are attracting highly qualified teachers. We negotiated with teachers this past fall, and we provide them with competitive salaries. We are giving them quality professional development. That is a huge part of this budget. And we also provide them with a supportive community, and it truly is a supportive community of parents and students. We are developing competitive students. And our students are becoming more and more competitive, and they need to be, not just to be accepted at competitive colleges, but to be prepared for the workforce and for citizenry. We want to decrease the number of withdrawals, and which is commonly called dropouts. And we want to also decrease the number of outplacements. In other words, we want to provide for our students within their community schools. Also to develop community pride and service, and that's a big part of the Suffield way. So we invest in the Suffield community when we invest in students. We attract home buyers because young families are looking for communities with good schools. I know that the topic of decreasing enrollment has been a topic for a while. Uh-oh. There we go. Sorry. Just yell when that happens. But actually, you'll see that we're not decreasing by very many students. So when we say it's a minus 19, those 19 students are spread across the entire district. So it's not as though we can decrease one teacher. We were blessed this year in many ways, and one particular way was the fact that the insurance rates dropped drastically for us. Bill Hoff, our business manager, who has been doing this work day and night with the budget, can tell you all the details, but a big part of that were a couple of things. One was the rates went down. We have a great history, medical history in our Suffield Public Schools, but also there will be less employees, which also means less people taking the insurance piece. So in this budget-to-budget staff summary, you'll see that we have decreased 29.8 what we call FTE, and that's educationese for full-time equivalent. What that means is a teacher full-time equivalent is based on the hours per day per week that a teacher works, which is different than the hours per day per week that a secretary works. So we talk about full-time equivalents rather than just full-time because everybody's a little bit different. But when we reduce these positions that I have listed here, and we reduce those positions through lots of conversations about how to use our resources strategically and how do we get to our goals that about student outcomes that I talked about at the beginning of this presentation. How do we do that and use our resources wisely and strategically? And we determined as an entire group that we needed to make some reductions as well as some additions. And the additions you see, we added 14.2 positions, full-time equivalents. But what those positions are everything from a tech integrationist to tech people. So a tech integrationist is actually working with teachers, knowing the latest and greatest software, devices, how to use devices with particular age levels, and helping those teachers use the technology as best as possible to help students move forward. The application specialists and network administrators are part of the technology department, and if you really asked me to tell you exactly what they do, I would be hard-pressed, to be honest. But they are important to our technology department in moving it forward. Elementary instructional coaches are just that. One elementary instructional coach would be for math, another one for literacy. They will work side by side with teachers, knowing best practices and what works, also knowing strategies that work for particular cohorts of students. These are not administrators. We are also adding one FTE elementary administrator, and that would be an assistant principal at Spalding. And that position has been needed for a very long time. This is not the first time it's been brought up. The number of meetings, the number of observations of teachers, the number of evaluations that need to be written up, the number of planning and placement team meetings needed for special education have increased significantly. We are not unlike many other school districts in the state and in the country. The responsibilities for administrators have increased significantly, I would say, over the last 10 years. And it's now time that we have 2 administrators at Spalding. We also want to add 2 school psychologists. One of those psychologists is coming out of a grant. The other one, however, is coming out of the local budget. We are seeing an increase. Again, we are not unlike other districts in the state or in the country. We are seeing an increase in students with social emotional problems. And we're seeing the increased need for a school psychologist who can do counseling with students as well as psychological testing with students. The Special Services Grant Specialist is a administrative assistant who does work for special services, and there's a lot of grant work involved in that work. We're also adding a .2, so that's about 1 day worth of world language, a .6, which is about 3 days in agricultural science, 2 secondary curriculum leaders. Currently, we have 2 curriculum leaders at the secondary level in literacy and in math. We are going to add social studies and science, a .5 custodian. I met with the DPW today. I don't know where John is and Mark is, but I think they were happy that we were doing this because this person is going to help with the landscaping around the grounds for all the schools. The after-school monitors and the van driver, duty clerk, those positions were added just before I came last summer, but certainly budget to budget, and again, it's budget to budget, so those positions came in after the budget was passed last time. So with full transparency, we want everyone to know that. So the budget increase is 1.56, so we rounded off at 1.6. This year, that's the increase from last fiscal year to this coming fiscal year, and we think it's really worth it because we have made a lot of achievements. We've had a lot of achievements in the Suffield Public Schools. This is a short list of those achievements, everything from the one-on-one Chromebooks to increased advanced placement courses to the math curriculum leaders, the Suffield High School media literacy class, a nationally recognized ag science program. So we're on a roll for achievements. However, we have a lot of work to do. And again, in full transparency, here's the work. There is an 18% gap between the four-year graduation rate of our non-special ed students and our special ed students. This past year, not this year, but last year, our ACT scores were below the state average. Our SAT scores need to improve. I'm really hoping they improve this year, but we won't be comparing apples to apples, unfortunately. We have to decrease chronic absenteeism. We have been working on that, and we're actually making headway. The last report from Suffield High School was that it's now down to 12%. So focus on that has been in progress. We didn't wait till the budget passed to start working on these things. We started right away. You can see that at the bottom we did a survey of teachers, students, and parents back in October. These 5 points are the 5 things we saw as things we needed to improve. These were the percentages of approval. We are working on those as we talk now, and we are giving another survey with the same questions at the end of this month, and we will be reporting that out in June. We will be giving the same survey every spring to make sure that we're making improvements. So here's all the money. Most of our money is in salaries and in benefits. And you can see that year to year, the salaries went up 3.15%. The other big item you can see is special ed is increasing 37.8%. That is because of the programming that we are developing in special ed. And there's a lot of development of special ed services that needs to happen. And I go back to that 18% gap. We know that we can bring that down, but we have to have programming within district. We also know that the outplacements are due to the fact that we don't have the right programming in place, and we're working on that. Again, we're not waiting for the budget to pass. We're working on it now, but we want to work even harder on it. So the total, of course, again, is 1.56% in the overall increase to the budget. The driving components, again, are really salaries and benefits. The driving components to decrease this budget were because we decreased what we call FTE, full-time equivalent employees. We were able to reduce health insurance. We did reduce paraprofessionals. We reduced a few certified staff members. We reduced a few academic support people. And with that, then, Social Security and Medicare were reduced as well. Looking at our pie chart, it's really obvious about benefits and salaries, that takes up the biggest part of our budget. We do have grants, and we use those grants as wisely as possible. You can see that we have everything from Title I grants to IDEA grants, which is a special ed grant, to the Open Choice grant, which is significant. That's a whole conversation if anyone's interested in knowing what choice is, but we do accept students from Hartford, and the State Department pays us money to do that. And we have specific grants in choice, so it does add up to a lot of money. The problem with grants is once those grants go away, so does the money. And many times we then have employees that have to lose their jobs, or we now can't get those services or those materials. So we do try to use that money wisely and strategically. This tells you the number of employees that are hired by the grant. So again, you can see that this year it's a little less, but we still have a little over 25 employees employed through grant money. And this is the revenue that comes in through the grants, educational cost share, the Ag Science grant, the tuition from Ag Science, because we do accept students from other districts. I will say about the excess cost grant, we never know exactly what the percentage is going to be. So even though we project it, we don't know for sure. Neither do we know the choice sped reimbursement. We're not quite sure because, for instance, this year there was a significant increase in the number of special ed students in district. Some moved in, some were part of the choice program, so we could never have predicted that last spring. It'd be great to have a crystal ball, but we don't. So with that, questions and comments?
Okay, thank you for the presentations. At this time, we can open it up to discussion. And again, I'd ask if you have a question, or why don't we start with, well, if you have a question or comment about anything that's been presented, I just ask you to raise your hand, and we have people ready with microphones to bring them to you. I'll designate who the person is that's going to be speaking, and then you can say your piece, and if it's a question, we might refer it back to the presenters, and if it's a comment, then we'll acknowledge the comment and move on. At this time, does anyone have any questions or comments about what's been presented? Yes, sir, here in the plaid shirt.
My name is Bob White, 995 Newgate Road. My question is just a clarification on the fact that when you're presenting the FTEs, we're down by 15.6, which sounds like a significant number of people that are not employed compared with last year, but the salaries are up 3.15%. So does that mean that the average salary went up by more than 3.15% because of the decrease in the number of employed?
Good question. Okay.
If you want to really go crazy, go online to our website and look at the contract for the teachers. And then it's not the teacher's fault, but it's the way the contracts work in every district, the salary schedule. So there are steps. Some teachers, literally, some teachers will get higher percentages than others, depending on what step they're on, meaning and what step, what year. So Bill can explain it a little better than I can even.
So you have a combination of the increases that are built in. I think it was 1.7%. If we were just to do nothing, we'd have an increase of 1.7% in our salaries. But on top of that, the people were replaced. Also, that are 15. We said we reduced 15, but I will say that the people that we're hiring, you saw that those are the curriculum leaders, and a assistant principal, some instructional coaches. They are going to be at a higher rate than some of the people that we are losing. So yes, the answer to your question is effectively yes. The average salary is going up. So.
Okay, thank you, Bill. And for those who don't know, that's Bill Hoff. He's the business manager at the school. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir. Mr. Koss.
Hi, Brian Koss, 10 Berry Place. I have a question on page 1. So the motion that was read at the beginning of the meeting to vote on was to approve the $61.6 million expenditure line. So we've had a presentation between the selectmen and the superintendent wondering what's driving that, and how it's being paid for. And then my second question also relates to the WPCA. On the fact sheet, oh, I'm sorry, on the fact sheet, on the first bullet, it says the WPCA budget information is for informational purposes only, and I'm wondering why we're voting on those expenditures for the WPCA at all when it's presented for informational purposes only.
This is Mr. Justin Donnelly, Chairman of the Board of Finance.
WPCA usually has a handout, and they always are available for questions. And I don't know whether that's so tonight because I've been sitting down in the front.
The budget's up 38%. That seems like a lot. I'm wondering why, and if we're voting on spending the money, we should understand what we're spending it on. So I just think if we're voting on spending $1 million more, according to the motion, and I have no idea why the budget's gone up by 38%.
As you know, Brian, we do not run the WPCA. The WPCA has a unique status in town. It is separate in certain legal aspects, and we, the Board of Finance, cannot dictate to the WPCA what they can spend or what they don't spend. They are part of the town. Clearly, they're part of the town because they use the town for their bonding. They use the town for their employees' participation in pension and medical insurance and the like. Certainly, everybody in town who is serviced by them is a citizen of this town and not just the WPCA. But we do not have any control over the WPCA and its budgeting other than its bonding.
But we're being asked to vote to approve $1 million increase on their budget. I think it would be nice to understand why it's going up by 38%. That seems like an awfully big number to me.
On
There should be
an
somebody here
academic,
to
intellectual
answer the
level, I
question.
wouldn't disagree with one word you're saying. All I am saying is that we have historically participated in the town meeting in passing their budget as part of the overall revenue package. And that's what we're doing here tonight, or what is being proposed here tonight. Just like in every other town meeting that I've attended, both before I came on the Board of Finance and since I've chaired the Board of Finance. But I can only respond to you and say that they have their existence, they usually have a handout, and they're usually here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Next question here, this man.
Piggybacking on Brian, there are 7 names in the report of Water Pollution Control Authority Commission members. Are any of them here tonight? I'm sorry, Ken Kaplan, 209 Suffield Meadow Drive.
Thank you.
Ken Kaplan, 209 Suffield Meadow Drive. The question is, there are 7 names listed as commission members for the WPCA. Are any of them here tonight? Raise your hand. Okay, can I ask you to answer the question?
Okay. I'm not sure why our budget is approved here. It was approved last night.
Can you state your name and address just for the record, sir?
Wally Roger at 48 Deep Brook Harbor.
Thank you.
It has been a tradition to list our budget amount at this meeting. However, the budget was approved by the WPCA last night after our public hearing. We were here earlier at the budget hearing and handed out what the town provided to you tonight, and invited people to come to our hearing. One thing that you should note that the The fee is going up to $300. It's going up $17. But that fee is what pays for our budget, plus grants and assessments, and money from some of our reserve funds. It is not part of the tax that citizens pay. So we are undertaking some studies to make sure that our system is adequate, and that's why we have an increased amount for this next year. But I would say in the future, if you are interested, come down and visit us.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Right here in the center, ma'am.
My name's Sharon Krebs, 709 Newgate Road, West Suffield. My question is for the superintendent, getting back to where we started. I am a former employee of the Board of Education. I was an academic tutor. I've done other numerous jobs, but I retired 4 years ago, and it amazes me that in the space of 4 years, the need for paras and academic support tutors has dwindled away. Superintendent actually mentioned that the reason for psychologists is that special ed needs or special attention for some student needs are increasing. And academic support and paras are the folks who are hand to hand and eye to eye with the students. It seems to me that in probably the last 5-6 years, we have become top-heavy administratively, and now we're pulling back more from attention given to the individual needs of the students. And according to the handout, it says that those reductions are coming through attrition only. I know quite a few academic support and tutor folks working in the town, and I can't think that that many of them are retiring or walking away. I'm wondering exactly what's driving that reduction. I approve of the administrative additions that have been suggested, but I think if we're looking to make reductions and make our bottom line better, somewhere other than the folks who actually work with the children needs to be considered.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you for all the service you gave to the school district. We appreciate your service as well as the service that all paraprofessionals and academic support people have given to the children in Suffield. And at the public hearing, I talked a little bit about this. When I first came to Suffield July 1, 2015, of course, the first thing I looked at was the budget as well as the employee count and where those employees were. And what I realized was that the number of paraprofessionals, non-certified staff working with children was more than what is typically used in a district twice our size or more than twice our size. So it was a big question mark and a red flag. So we looked into it further. On the paraprofessional side, we have reduced 15 paraprofessionals, and on the academic support side, we have reduced academic support people by 5.8, I think it is. The 15 paraprofessionals, first of all, when I got here, they had just added 5 paraprofessionals. So no one was in those spots. They were additions in the last budget. And when we started looking at who actually needed those paraprofessionals, was there data to say who needed those paraprofessionals? There was no data. So that was 5 right off the top. We then did have paraprofessionals that we knew we could reassign because they were not working with children. So I think sometimes also what happens over time is we hire a paraprofessional to work with a child, but pretty soon we have a paraprofessional running copies and running Chromebooks to people and taking notes around. And we wanted to focus on children and their academic success, which I think is exactly what you were saying, is that's why we have them. So some of those paraprofessionals who were not working with children are now working with children, which meant we needed less paraprofessionals. All 15 paraprofessionals, the 10, besides that 5, have all left due to moved, found jobs elsewhere. Some of them actually had education degrees and found teaching jobs. And we are still meeting the needs of all the children. Paraprofessionals typically are in our media center. We have some paraprofessionals, general ed paraprofessionals. Most of those paraprofessionals, and right now there are, I want to say 53, still there are 53 paraprofessionals. Most of those are special education paraprofessionals, and that is driven by child need, and that will continue so that when children need a paraprofessional, they will have one in special education. But at this point, we don't need those 15. The academic support, I think everyone we have had 3 or 3.5 leave, again, for the same kinds of reasons. Either a different job, needed a job making more money, needed a job for more time, and so they have left as well. Our philosophy is that we need to put certified staff in front of those children as much as possible. Not that we're going to do without paraprofessionals. That's not ever going to happen. We will always need non-certified trained staff. That's clear. But at this time, even looking in our data, in our academic data, of how we are doing academically in math and literacy, we firmly believe that we need more certified staff working with students at this time.
Okay, thank you. Sir, right on the aisle, please. Okay. I'm just the moderator. Do you want him to repeat the question with the microphone? Okay. And Mr. Falkowski, if you could state your name and address again for the record, please.
Sure. Matt Felkowski, 805 Mountain Road, Suffield. My first thing is I don't think Mr. Costa's question was answered. He asked a question about $1 million increase, and I don't think he got a legitimate response. My second question is the superintendent of schools said she can't explain something to us. If she can't explain something to us, I don't want to pay for it. So it had something to do with technology, what that position was. I'd like to know what it is that we're paying for. My third question was, with regards to this choice program, are we bringing on a cost? Are we bringing on a revenue that's got a bigger cost to us than the revenue that's generated?
Okay,
That's how much revenue we get from, we're projecting for choice next year.
Okay.
Plus the sped cost.
first of all, I couldn't, off the top of my head, tell you about the application specialist and the network administrator. However, had you come to our meeting, Board of Ed meeting on January 4th, Rebecca Oslinger, who is our Director of Technology, could have explained it in detail. And if you would like an explanation of that, you can actually look on our website for that particular Board of Ed meeting, and it is explained, as well as her whole presentation is on our website. So please do that. If that's not enough information, you can email me personally. Okay? Secondly, for next year, we will receive $725,325 plus any costs for special education students who are choice students. So we do get funding that we are able to use in Suffield for all students. So in that $725,000 roughly, those funds can be used for all students. The one psychologist that we are hiring, she is through one of the choice grants. She will work with all students, not just choice students. So I think that's what you wanted to know. Are we getting monies that can be used for Suffield students? And the answer is yes.
My follow-up to that question is do we bring these choice students in? Do they cost us more money than what they bring in revenue?
No.
You can state that categorically.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They do not cost us more money.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
As to the WPCA, if Mr. Rogers' answer wasn't enough, all I can say is, I would assume you probably went to the public hearing last night, given that you have a lot of property in their district. But we don't set the rates, they set the rates, they set the assessments, they set the rates for residential and commercial. We don't have any control over that. All we can do is we provide them the entire, if you will, grand list support, the credit of this town whenever they need financing. We provide their employees with pension benefits through the plan. We provide them with medical insurance. But we, the Board of Finance, are not involved in setting anything, having anything to do with the finances of the WPCA. In a way, I wish we did, but we don't. And that's all I can tell you. And if Mr. Rogers got a better answer, or anybody else has a better answer, I cannot tell you any more than that.
Mr. Donnelly, you've done a fine job of answering my question. I have the highest respect for you. I just don't think Mr. Kost's question, unless, Brian, did you get an answer to your question? Well, educate me, Mr. Kost. I have a 6th grade education.
If I may just interject, all communication really does need to flow through the moderator. So if you'd like to direct a question back to Mr. Kost, if you could just request that I do it, I will. Mr. Kost, if you would like the floor to answer the question, we would appreciate it.
We're spending the money on a study, I believe, on the future infrastructure needs. The basic question I have is, why are we even voting on this in the budget? Why is it even in the motion? Shouldn't we just be voting on the general fund budget, particularly if we have no authority over what's being spent by the WPCA in the first place?
I'm a relatively new resident. This has been on the budget and presented this way for the 40 years I've lived in town. That's all I can tell you. It makes a great deal of sense to me as a person who used to be a practicing attorney that if the town is in fact responsible, and we are responsible for the WPCA overall, and if the town is in fact the repository for its credit to allow that WPCA to raise money, then it's logical to me, and as I've said to you before about the employees, it's logical to me that it appears on every budget that I've been here for 40 years, maybe it's 42. In any event, that's my best answer that I can give you. And maybe the first select person has another thought.
Thank you, Mr. Falkowski and Mr. Cost, for raising this issue. I've been in office 6 months now, and I can say that the WPCA and the way it's operated and its relationship with the town is on my to-do list. It is a structure that I think could be better because, for example, the first selectman has an ex officio position on all of the commissions in town except for the Board of Education and the WPCA. And so I think that because they are a self-sustaining body that sets their own rates, sets their own assessments, those assessments that they set impact our ability as a town to do economic development. And so we are in a situation where we have to accept what they come up with without any input, and that is not ideal for a town, especially a town like Suffield that has a growing commercial industry and is trying to expand and grow its commercial tax base. And so that is something that I plan on taking a look at, and I will report back to you at a Board of Selectmen meeting based on what I find out, and I can hope to get you some answers and to perhaps make the WPCA a bit more accountable to the town. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fitzgerald?
Brian Fitzgerald, 1210 Newgate Road. I move to amend the bottom line of the budget. Our total expenditures of $61,632,624. Amended it downward to $57,444,670.
We have a motion and a second. We have a amendment and a second. We'll move to discussion on that amendment. Can you provide a reason why we would do that?
If you look at the front page of your budget, you will see that the total expenditure, $61 million, is with the Water Pollution Control Authority's money in the expenditure. If they're not willing to tell us what that money is for and that they can raise it whether we vote on it or not, why are we having it in our budget? It's much as what Mr. Cost has mentioned before. What we really should be voting on is the $57,445,670. There's no real, especially when they don't want to tell us what their 38% increase is for. Further, our charter revision back in November approved the fact that the Water Pollution Control Authority's budget must go to the Board of Finance for review. Obviously, the review wasn't much when the Board of Finance can't even say what the 38% increase is all about. Therefore, until we get this straightened out, why do we bother with the WPCA? Let them try and take their thing their own way. But bear in mind, WPCA is a taxing authority. You must pay the tax. And everybody, to my mind, must get reviewed. All groups must get reviewed, including WPCA. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.